name is Danelle Sanner. I'm the Community Liaison for the Mount Pleasant Business District Authority, and today we have another episode of Good to Know. Today we are going to speak with Dan Slezak, owner of Spoked Wheels, who's going to give us some information and tips on ways to service our bike, fitness equipment, and skis. So let's get started with this Good to Know video.
Hello, my name is Dan Slezak. I'm the owner of Spoked Wheels, and I'm going to talk to you today about the services we do. This is our business card, and if you notice, it says cycling, fitness, snow. So we do service work for bicycles, fitness equipment, and skis. So we're going to start here with a bicycle. This is one of my personal bikes. It's got the red, green, and white theme. This is Campagnolo equipped, which is Italian, so that's why the theme's going on here. But basically, I'm going to start with some tips to take care of your bicycle, to basic things that you can do. Number one is getting air in the tires. The most important thing to do when you get your bicycle out is to top the tires off. There's usually an air pressure that's stamped on the sidewalls. If you have some type of a bicycle pump like this is what we call a floor pump. You can use an air compressor, which is what we have in the shop. This is an air chuck, but we want to get the air in the tires. Now, most bicycles will have what's called a Schrader valve. This is an inner tube right here. This Schrader valve is what you see on an automobile, on a car. This is what you'll find on most bicycles. You simply take the air chuck, which is hooked up to a compressor or onto the pump. You insert this on here. You inflate the tire to the required pressure that's stamped on the sidewalls. Now, a lot of times you'll see a valve like this called a Presta valve. This is a European style valve. These are put on the bikes for a couple reasons. They're normally on higher pressure tires or higher end bicycles. The purpose of this valve is, number one, it's metal, so it's less resistant to get cut. It holds the air a lot better, and it's just a little bit more efficient is what it gets down to. But if you don't have a bicycle pump and you're trying to use a compressor, they make a little adapter like this called a Presta valve adapter. And the way this little guy works is you simply thread the end up, you push on that and crack the valve, you thread the adapter on. Now it's a normal valve, just like our Schrader valve. These are identical now. When you're done, you take the Presta valve adapter off, close the little tip, and sometimes there's a valve cap you can put on there, and you're basically ready to go. So those are the two major valves that you'll see on a bicycle. The second thing is keeping the bike clean. Most of the bicycle trails out there have a real fine grit, that real fine sand. It gets everywhere. It's important to wash the bike off. We don't recommend taking it to the car wash and power washing it. That's not real healthy. But you can use your garden hose with a standard garden nozzle like this with some different settings. What we like to do is to take a bucket of water, you can either use Dawn dishwashing liquid, or you can use Simple Green. This is another product that we like to use. Mix it up, you'll have suds and water. First thing to do, once you get the whole bike sprayed down and it's wet, you want to take some degreaser. If they're really dirty, this engine degreaser, this gunk works. This stuff smells like diesel fuel, so it kind of stinks, but it does an exceptional job of getting the heavy dirt off. And what we'll do is spray that right on the chain, on the cranks, right on the derailleurs, etc. Now, I'll have a whole series of brushes on the bench here, but we'll have a couple brushes. Number one, we'll use one just specifically for cleaning off the dirt, grime off of the drivetrain. Once you scrub that in and let it settle, you just take your garden hose and just go back and just spray and rinse all of that off. Now, the reason you want to have all the other brushes, for example, cleaning the wheels, you don't want the brush you just got all the oil on to get on your seat or your handlebars. So I'll have a brush that'll be just for the wheels. I'll have another brush that I'll use for like on the brakes, so that I can get in and around the brakes on the front and the back. And then the final thing that I'll have is a sponge, and we'll just wash the rest of the bike off. So once the bike's all washed and degreased, we just rinse it off, and we'll just stick it out in the sun and let it dry, air dry, you'll be done. The last and final thing is to lubricate the chain. This is my favorite. This is Finish Line Dry Lube. When you get out on the bike trails, a lot of them are real fine grit, very dusty. So you don't want an oil on here that attracts a lot of dirt. For example, this is Tri-Flow. I don't consider this a very good chain lube for on the bike trail. This is a good lube for other things, but not on the trail. The dry lube basically doesn't attract as much dirt. So to lubricate the chain, we simply shake this up. we're going to apply a little bit right onto the chain. Now the only thing I want to lube is that center link. Once I go the whole way around, what I'll do then is I'll take a rag and wrap it around here. And grab one out of the bin. We'll take a rag and wrap it around the chain, and we just pedal the bike backwards. And what that does is it wipes all the excess oil off. And as you can see, there's a fair amount on there. Again, we want to just lubricate the center points of the chain, wipe the excess oil off, and that will keep a lot of dirt and grime from sticking to the chain. Last thing is, we mentioned the Tri-Flow. I said it's not a good chain lube, but what this is good for, we just washed the bike, is to lubricate all the pivot points in the derailleurs. There's 4, 8 on the back, and you'll have the same 8 on the front. Just a quick little lube of those and it's set. So we've aired up our tires, we've cleaned our bike, we lubricated our chain, we're ready to go ride. Okay, this is the next part of our business. As I said, we work on fitness equipment. We primarily do home fitness equipment, but we do commercial also. So I have a couple different components laying here. Because we do the stuff in the home, we're in the shop, I don't have an actual treadmill here. But I'm going to show some components, I'm going to show their relationship and why it's important to have your treadmill serviced and kind of what's going on if it doesn't work. Now, probably the most common thing that I'll hear from customers is, wow, I had this treadmill that ran all these years and one day the motor quit working. Well, 9 times out of 10, the motor didn't quit working, the motor controller burned up. Now this is the circuit board right here that drives the motor. This is a hodgepodge of parts from some different treadmills. These are some dead parts, if you will. But if you look on this motor controller here, you're going to see a burn mark right there. This is where the electricity comes into the circuit board. And as you can see, this got very hot, it got burnt, and this disconnected. Next thing you know, the machine doesn't work. Now this board is actually dead. Because of the high amp draw that was created, this circuit board's fried. Now notice I didn't talk about the motor because it's the motor controller that died. This is the drive motor that is hooked up to the motor controller that drives and turns your belt. Now what's important to understand and what caused all of that, and this is one of the things we do when we service your machine. This is the walking belt. This is the belt that's stretched out that you walk on, run on, whatever. There's a backing material on this belt, this white material here, and this runs on a wooden deck that has a very slick coating to it. And there's also a form of a lubricant that goes between the deck and the belt. It's important to keep this lube is like a gel. It's almost like a motor oil that would be in your car, but this is part wax, part silicone. And what we do when we come in is we'll use an electric meter and we'll monitor how hard that motor's working when it's loaded. So I get on the machine, we start walking, we'll use an electrical meter to monitor how hard these two components are working to drive the load, which is you running or walking on your treadmill. We will apply the lubricant as needed. We will make sure the backing on this belt there's not very much friction. That's really what we're looking for. Because what happens, this is like a car tire on your car. You can take very good care of your car, and depending on how you drive, you got to monitor your air pressure, rotate your tires. You'll get a good life out of your car tires. A treadmill is the same thing. As this belt wears, that backing, it needs to be monitored, it needs to be lubricated, and it needs to be changed at the appropriate time. When this belt is changed out, it will prevent these components from burning out. Now this board, for example, is about $250 to $300. This drive motor, now this is a little one right here. This motor is probably about $200, somewhere in that price range. When this burns, this wears and takes those out, and you have to replace all 3 of them, the repair becomes pretty expensive and may not be feasible. But if we can come in and replace this belt at the right interval and not burn these out, this is how you keep the treadmill running for many, many years. So this is just one of the many services that we do for fitness equipment. This is just treadmill. We do work on ellipticals, exercise bikes, strength equipment, etc. So any of your fitness needs, give us a call. And yes, we do work on commercial units. Okay, this is the third final thing on our card. It says snow. That refers to snow skis and snowboards. We also work on cross-country skis, but skis and snowboards are the primary part of our business. This piece of equipment sitting right here is our ski and snowboard grinder. This is basically a big belt sander. This has a sanding belt on here. What we do is we run your skis across here. There's a very smooth metal section underneath here that allows us to grind the base of your skis flat. Now this ski right here is a pretty extreme case. This is the kind of stuff we like. These have been sitting in the garage for a very long time. As you can see, there's a metal edge and they're all rusted up. You almost need a tetanus shot to touch this thing. This is extremely bad. But what we will do is we will run that across this grinder, and what that will do is it will grind this plastic base. It will also grind off that rust, and it will sharpen those edges. Once we get this base all ground down, if there's any heavy nicks in the base, traditionally they use what's called P-Tex. It's a gun, heats up the plastic, and it just kind of smushes it in there. We find that doesn't work very well, and we prefer to use what's called a base welder. That's what this instrument is right here. What a base welder basically does is just like when you weld metal, it melts the base material and the filler wire, and it bonds them as two. And this is the filler wire that we add. So this is really common on our snowboards that we get into the shop. This is a great example because in skis the object is to miss things. In snowboarding the object is usually to hit things. And when you hit things you start putting these big gouges in the base like this. Now this base should be relatively smooth. Again, these haven't been touched. They're in for service. We're ready to work on them. That big gouge right there, what we will do is we will take a piece of filler wire and we'll use our base welder. And what this does is there's compressed air and it heats up, so there's hot air coming through here. And what we will do is we will take this wire and feed it through here, and that instrument will take this piece of wire, this plastic, and it will weld that into the base, which makes a permanent bond. And once we get that welded in there and it cools, we will then take that snowboard and we will run that across this grinder, and it will smooth that out. Now what happens with some of these snowboards is the idea is to get this perfectly flat, but these are kind of imperfect, they're kind of wavy, and when we grind these boards we'll find there's sections where it touches, it doesn't touch. We have what's a little secret weapon here. This piece was made specifically for this grinder. Again, there's a very smooth, perfectly flat section under here called a platen. This is what's called an air platen. This is an airbag. Okay, there's a valve on here, and what this does, this holds about 9 to 10 pounds of pressure. This fits underneath the belt on the grinder. So once we get down to the final steps of our snowboard, this is an 80 grit belt. We'll step it down to 100, 120. We'll keep running finer grit belts. But once we get down to the end and there's spots where the grinder hasn't hit, we'll put this air platen on, and what that does, it conforms to the bottom of the board for the finishing touches and allows us to grind this thing so that we'll look absolutely perfect when it's done. A lot of people bring us snowboards, and when they pick them up, they're just blown away at how good they look. Last and final thing to talk about, again, there's a metal edge. We saw the really rusty one on the ski where your snowboard has the same thing. There's a bottom and there's a side. And again, this grinder has an attachment. We run this out. We'll take your snowboard. When this machine's running, once we grind the base flat, we'll just run this right along here, and that will sharpen the side edge. When we put that edge on the snowboard or on your ski, that's what creates the grip. So as you go down the mountain, you rock up on the edges, this metal edge will dig in, and that sharp edge is what allows you to control, stop, and really be able to control the board as how it rides. Now the snowboards also have bindings. This is kind of an ancient archaic system here. These are the old school step-in bindings. This is what you would traditionally see on probably 99.9% of the boards out there. We can mount these for you, adjust the straps, etc. This is a releasable binding that is mounted on here. Your ski boot fits in there. There are different settings. We have all the tools and instruments to calibrate and set these bindings based on your skier ability, your weight, etc. So whatever your ski needs are, just bring them to us. We can pretty much take care of it.
And there you have it, such great information for your maintenance on bikes, skis, and fitness equipment. For all of your service needs, contact Spoke Wheels, located right here in the heart of Mount Pleasant on Main Street.